And yesterday it was basically a science day, and also it was designated as a youth and a future generation day. So there were a lot of events surrounding that. Some have been reported, some are still not been reported. So a lot of youth and climate activities happened yesterday, and then a few reports were released on science and the predictions related to that. But apart from that, the regular technical negotiations continued. In fact, on a range of issues, I think COP27 delegates are now warming up to discussions, and a lot of issues are being raised, and perspectives are being challenged. So slowly the battle lines are emerging. I think in next 2-3 days probably we'll have more details on how these things are going. So yesterday on 10th November 2022, these negotiations continued on different topics, and most of them are technical, and we do not have information on all the committee meetings or the workshops which are conducted. And whatever were conducted, we have only technical information, so sometimes they are at a very basic level. So I don't think we have much to discuss in that sense. But however, I'm just looking at very major events and major points which can be of interest to all of us, and also to in the next stage of negotiations. So I think yesterday on 10th November, a report was launched, which was titled as 10 New Insights in Climate Science, and this report was brought out by Future Earth. It's an international network, and the Earth League and the World Climate Research Program. Now, what are those 10 new insights in climate science? They are, again, it's not just science, So they were talking the foremost and the topmost point was there cannot be expectation on adaptation. There cannot be endless adaptation. So that means you can't keep on adapting. There are limits to adaptation, and that I think this report is trying to bring out very clearly. You can't you can't adapt to wildfires. You might adapt to warming, but again, you might adapt to 1.5 degrees, but maybe 2 degrees or 2.5 degrees centigrade may not be, we may not be able to adapt to such conditions. And of course, it's the same with all other forms of life. So adaptation, there are limitations. I think that is very clear, and based on that, I think again the negotiations might be different. If that is recognized. So yesterday, I think finance-related issues were discussed again. Cooperative implementation. This is what has been emphasized by COP27 president. He said it's not about funds or any substantive, loss and damage issue. It is more about a cooperative implementation, facilitating a cooperation between different countries. So that's what COP27 has clarified 3 days back. So there were discussion yesterday on that, especially under the Paris Agreement, Article 6. And then scaling up mitigation ambition was also discussed. Implementation were also discussed. And of course, there are a lot of experts, global experts who discuss various aspects of climate change in a lot of pavilions. There were a number of pavilions of different countries, including India, and each of the pavilion was hosting a meeting or a workshop, which where I think most of the delegates were attending. So apart from the negotiators, there is a large number of civil society participation. So we'll discuss how many are there today, because we have got some data on that. Uh, so going into the technical aspects, there was this meeting on long-term climate finance. Now, importantly, this meeting, looked at why the Standing Committee on Finance, they produced a report about 3 days back. It was released. But there was not much of, consensus within that committee on that report. So this meeting on long-term climate finance looked at why this is not happening, why it is not agreed upon, especially the $100 billion goal. That was the goal of this Standing Committee on Finance. So developing countries were calling for substantive discussion on long-term finance, especially achieving a balance between mitigation and adaptation finance. This is again, it keeps coming back, because there are limitations in finances. The competition between mitigation, adaptation, and loss and balance is going to come up. So developing countries are asking for balance between mitigation and adaptation finance. Even if more funds are allotted to any of the activities, I think it will upset that balance. Now, second, I think this committee, someone raised sharing of resources through the operating entities of the financial mechanism. So, how do we share the resources is a question which has been raised. So, the methodologies and how climate finance can be tracked, what kind of assessment will go into that, what kind of accountability is required. So all these questions have been on the table. They were put on the table. I think a draft text will be developed over next few days of discussions. But that's what I am surprised, because this is not the first time long-term finance has been discussed, nor for that matter, any of these aspects which we have been reviewing for the past 5 days. COP27, this is the 27 meeting of Conference of Parties, and most of the issues have been part of this COP discussion. So I was wondering how this, when you look at the some of the minutes or the aspects which are shared on the technical negotiation, it looks like they are at a very basic level. And that I was wondering how that means the previous COPs and whatever discussions they were happening, they were very basic. So when do we come out of this basic is still a question. If you have not done that in the past, maybe even if you take COP 15, Paris Agreement as the basis, and from then on, even now, after that, at least seven COPs have happened. But this basic level of discussion is very surprising for me. So I think we need to see why they are still at that basic level discussing. There has to be balance between mitigation and adaptation, and what kind of operating entities are there. I thought by now, some text on these should have been there already, or even if they are not agreed upon, at least that a preliminary text on these, including accountability process, overview of finance flows. I think all this should have come, but that's very surprising. I think we need to see why that is not progressing. Coming to, there was a seventh review of the financial mechanism. This is another. This is a seventh review, not a first review, and the seventh review says, there was some wrangling about the role of CMA with respect to the review. CMA is basically about the mechanisms related to Paris Agreement. So I think now this wrangling has come to yesterday. That is again significant, status to be noted. Now, as part of the Standing Committee on Finance, they looked at the report and what they were saying. They are now underscoring the need for a common definition of climate finance. Now, if you remember, India, went into the COP27 based on this demand for defining climate finance. Even last COP26, there were some demands, and even African Nations Alliance, they are asking for a common definition of climate finance. This again a concern for me, because in these 7 years of Paris Agreement, if they have not come up with a definition of climate finance, I think what kind of progress we are looking at in this COP meetings is a question which keeps coming back. Now, the Standing Committee again raised about continuous engagement of Standing Committee of Finance on Paris Agreement Article 2.1c, including with regard to tracking and metrics. So, tracking, how do we track a climate finance? What kind of metrics are used about achievements or progress? I think still that engagement is being asked for. And then the development, there was, I think yesterday, one developing country underscore 2.1c has not been properly contextualized, pointing to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respect to capabilities. So this, I think, again shows that contextualization has not happened. So I think that's how one of the participants was asking yesterday. Now, there was this meeting of matters relating to funding arrangements responding to loss and damage associated with adverse effects of climate change. So this loss and damage, as you know, has come up in the agenda of COP27, and now they are discussing what kind of funding arrangements can be made. So then there are, yesterday's discussion, they looked at the nature of funding arrangements, and different views came because each country was giving their own perspective. So one of the, I think, a big one was whether this funding arrangement can be a standalone facility. So, or it will be linked with other funds which are already there. So, but developed countries, they wanted already the options are there with regard to green climate fund is there, a global environment facility is there, adaptation fund is there. So there are other mechanisms which are there. I think they were questioning this standalone facility for loss and damage. But then, if you look at the scale of the work which can emerge once the loss and damage is accepted, because each country has these multiple events which are destroying their environment and the local economy. And several countries are there, at least 50, 60 countries are directly affected every year a number of times. So I think the loss and damage is going to be a major portfolio of work within COP, basically UNFCCC framework of work. So in that sense, I think a standalone facility might be more helpful because it can be more dedicated. But I think the developed countries who are responsible for providing finance for this, so they don't think they need a standalone facility. So I think this is again is going to be discussed in the next 10 days, and let's see if there is going to be a agreement on that. Now, the other discussions in the same group was about a space to map the assess the gaps, issue such as non-economic losses. Now, under loss and damage, there can be a lot of non-economic losses, and then like in drought, you can't see the destruction or damage immediately. It is a slow onset of events. Even in sometimes when you take floods can keep coming very slowly, and they may not carry away or destroy the property. But the very presence of water in an undesirable place can have lead to loss and damage. So, how do we look into these issues? Was also discussed yesterday in this committee meeting. So there was suggestion about the Glasgow dialogue, which where these aspects were discussed. So, so that reference is being given by some people. So overall, I think loss and damage looks to be more at a rudimentary stage of discussion, especially because even the climate finance, which has been long back in the agenda of COP, and that discussion seemed to be happening without a definition so far. Now I wonder whether loss and damage mechanism can emerge from COP27. I think that's a question which I'm asking myself. Now, if you remember, last 2 days, 3 days, we have been discussing this Article 6.4, where this carbon removals have been discussed, especially under the market mechanisms. So they were discussing again the rules, modalities, and procedures for the mechanism established by 6.4 on carbon removal. I think there was a report given by the supervisory body that was just before the beginning of COP27. And some of the recommendations were pointed out by civil society because they are outrageous and silent on some of the important aspects. So yesterday there was a meeting on that, and Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay, these three countries called ABU. There is concerns about the vagueness of the text because and silence on important issues, which allows projects which can be linked with ocean geoengineering or some such technological fixes on carbon removal. So I think this was raised probably in next few days again. This is going to be discussed and probably we have to see if they are going to agree upon those recommendations or they'll reject those recommendations. But I think there was a lot of concern on the lack of differentiation between different removal types. Carbon removal has a lot of technologies and methods of carbon removal. Uh, but I think later, someone was commenting, uh, what is this direct capture of carbon? So this technology has been questioned. And yesterday, someone it seems was commenting, it is like emptying a big swimming pool using a teaspoon. So emptying water from big space swimming pool using a teaspoon is what has been referred to this carbon capture technology. So it only means that how much effective these kind of technologies can be, and whether they will be able to, help in unburdening the atmosphere of carbon in the near future. But as 400 tons 400 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent carbon is there in the atmosphere, removing that through these small technologies is being ridiculed or being questioned. So we need to see whether carbon removal is still a viable process. Similar to what net zero is saying. Net zero is again saying we will continue to emit carbon, but we'll also have a market mechanism, credit system, or many other methods where we buy out those credits. So basically, essentially a financial mechanism to show that there is a balance between carbon emissions and carbon removal or sinking into the natural form. So that's where afforestation programs or these kind of technologies are being discussed as solutions. But then the questions about the impact, how fast and how wide this impact of these technologies can be, and the carbon load within the atmosphere. So I think that is being discussed on the table. Now, coming to climate finance, I think again a new collective quantified goal on climate finance was discussed yesterday. So they wanted a collective quantified goal because this $100 billion of climate finance has been questioned earlier, and Africa has been asking for $37 trillion, and various other assessments are there. In fact, Standing Committee on Finance, they released a report 3 days back, and where there is a comparison between these different assessments of what kind of what is the goal, quantified goal of climate finance. So there are different scenarios and different perspectives. So this discussion tried to bring that together. So even this meeting, they discussed the balance between mitigation and adaptation. I think that is what has been done. And secondly, there is this sentiment or basically a perspective that this new collective quantified goal should include loss and damage. It was not there earlier. So the demand is for including that, including loss and damage in this new collective quantified goal on climate finance. Uh, so one developed country, they said we should discuss this goal in 2024, while a developing country considers the quantum as the most important aspect of the goal. So I think that's what this looks like, postponing the decision, because someone is saying we'll quantify the goal next year, and then there is other perspective where they are adding the quantum, as a one of the factors to be discussed in this committee. So there was a subsidiary body for implementation, and under that there were a few discussions. I'm sorry, this is more technical and sometimes very superficial kind of review, because most of the content is still yet to be clear to a non-involved observer. So because we are doing this long distance review, I think please bear with me with some of the aspects which may not be, which may not have that in-depth approach, which would have come from a participant sitting there in Sharm el Sheikh. So maybe so that limitation is there for this review. So the subsidiary body for implementation, there were two meetings under that. So one was the fourth review of the adaptation fund. So this adaptation fund was reviewed, and there they were looking at their language on outstanding pledges. Outstanding is a lot of countries have yet to review their pledges, given the need for ambitious goals. So based on that, I know some developing countries they suggested the amount to be reviewed under adaptation fund, because based on the pledge and the kind of language which was used in that pledge by the developed countries. So that is coming under question, because sometimes this pledge itself is being used to circumvent that responsibility of providing funds for adaptation fund. So I think there was a little hot discussion, and developed countries opposed, saying naming and shaming is not useful. So they did not want any country to be named and shamed for not contributing to adaptation fund. So there is some resistance from developed countries which we can see. So I think ultimately they said informal discussions will continue. And then matters relating to least developed countries was also discussed, and their national action plans have been part of the discussion. But someone said this is not required. It need not be brought under this format. So there was no agreement among the parties. So ultimately, the facilitators and the convener of the meeting, they they said they'll consult the chair of a subsidiary body for implementation on what to do about matters relating to least developed countries. So, but I think this will be a disappointment for small countries like Pakistan or even further small island nations like Tuvalu. So in fact, Tuvalu has been very vocal in demanding funds for basically loss and damage, but also they were asking for a reduction, drastic review of the goals with regard to fossil fuels. So they want actually a fossil fuel, non-proliferation treaty. So they expect that with reduction in fossil fuel consumption, this cascading effect on climate change and the global warming, and then the rains or natural events, I think that will get reduced. So that's a sentiment, that's a viewpoint which is being, which was discussed yesterday. Now, importantly, I thought, because we discussed under Article 6.4, market approaches, carbon development mechanism, carbon removals, and various other aspects. But what about non-market approaches? I think that again looks very interesting. So there was a discussion in one of the committees. So they were trying to develop a work program under the framework for non-market approaches, which were referred in Article 6.8 of Paris Agreement. So there were again, the focus was on accomplishment of nationally determined contributions. Then they were looking at how non-market approaches require, what kind of financial support is required. I think that discussion began with those aspects. But importantly, Bolivia, I think it supported least and marginalized developed countries. So the text, they were talking of the supported language in the text, which requires the secretary to develop and operationalize a web-based platform for registry of needs and provision of means of implementation. So apparently there was this web-based platform which was agreed upon earlier, but I think Bolivia was concerned about the language which is used there. And then there was a suggestion of creating a matchmaking function. So whenever these non-market approaches are being discussed, a matchmaking function has to be given is one of the demands. But then developed countries did not agree with that. They said identifying is important. Identifying the non-market approaches is very important. As an alternative to matchmaking, non-market approaches between developed and developing countries. So I think still that differentiation is going upon, but there was another suggestion that there should be a repository of existing non-market approaches by including contact information of the projects or activities related to non-market approaches, especially either done by public sector, basically government, and civil society. I think these are so that repository is being recommended. And then someone was mentioning, instead of asking for a matchmaking function, there should be a manual and automatic matchmaking activity. So I think the discussion went around these matchmaking function, and then identifying who does what. I think those are all which came up yesterday in the meeting. So ultimately, they decided that the discussions will continue in informal informals. This again, I thought is a new word. What is informal informals? So I think we have to check the dictionary or what has been shared in Sharm el Sheikh website. What is informal informals? So that is, I think it's about extending the informality. But again, I know it is surprising that they are still at a level of informals. So why informal? What kind of advantage this informal gives in terms of progressing on the discussions and agreeing upon at least what can be done under that committee. So basically, a actionable outcome, whether this will come out of informal informals or if there is a formal meeting. I think still is a question. So yesterday, I think there was this Middle East Green Initiative which was launched. So basically, if you remember, next year COP, next 2 years in 2024, COP28 is moving to United Arab Emirates as a Middle East country. So this Middle East Green Initiative is very, I think, important step, because most of the Middle East countries are producing oil, or they are part of the oil production network. So for this green initiative, Saudi Kingdom has announced $2.5 billion over the next 10 years to restore degraded land and combat desertification. Now, there's a significant amount which came from Saudi Arabia. But here again, we are reminded of this how to restore degraded land and combat desertification, because Sharm el Sheikh, where this COP27 is happening, around that area in Egypt, desertification is a major concern. In fact, some of the delegates took photographs and they were sharing on the social media, saying this is the geography around this venue, and that venue, that geography looks very desert-like condition, lot of sand, and the geography is completely like a desert. In terms of observations, I think there are a few. As every day, what I mentioned earlier is COP27 is crowded. I think that's what is emerging very clearly. So everyone seems to be having a meeting, involved in a workshop, and sharing their ideas or pushing their views or developing perspectives. So my concern is, who are the participants? Are they the negotiators? And why all these kind of workshops are happening at COP27? Why can't they happen at their home, or why can't it happen over Zoom or web, instead of all of them flying there and sitting there and causing or adding to carbon emissions? So I think this is a question I think we need to look at again and again as to why so many people are coming and joining these official delegations in COP27. Now, pavilions, I think there are, each country has a pavilion in the venue, and these pavilions have become meeting points for different stakeholders. So each country is trying to organize discussions as per their interests, and promoting a thinking process which tries to influence civil society and probably the media, and then the negotiators at the COP27. Though we don't know if all the meetings are attended by negotiators, or they will take a break from the serious negotiations and sit in these webinars and workshops. That we don't know, but quite a few events were reported. We need to see who is participating, how is still a question there. But my question is still there. Why so many meetings are happening at COP27? Instead, they could have been done from elsewhere, or they could have happened elsewhere. So this is still a question. A lot of comments come, which are very important, and I think some are very hilarious as well. So one question was on India. India is about to become president of G20 group of countries, and now there is this reports that just energy transition partnership, where this partnership is offered by Europe and other countries to India, and under that there will be some financing will also be happening. So in that context, recently, just in this week, Indian coal minister said that India is not moving away from coal in the foreseeable future. So what does this mean is being questioned. In fact, the Richa Sharma, who is the head of the delegation of Indian delegation, she has openly remarked that India will use coal because it has a right to, under climate justice, because someone else has used, and now we have the space to use the coal, and we have space for carbon, because now the carbon in atmosphere, I think that is being attributed to the historical polluters. So based on the share of allocation, there is this demand, from countries like India, that they will continue to use coal. So this again means coal load is already there in the atmosphere, and in the name of justice, people want to add more coal to that. So I think this dichotomous positions is very problematic, because developing countries are saying, because of you, we are facing this climate events, extreme weather events, and we are suffering, and there is a lot of loss and damage. And then next step, they say we want to travel the same path which you traveled, because just because we did not travel there and you traveled and you are enjoying that, the benefit of that travel. So this dichotomy, I think, is going to continue. There was this other comment about this $100 billion, and when the pledges were not fulfilled, how can we trust these countries, and how do they demonstrate that there is urgency and ambition to reduce the carbon emissions? So that is one of the comments which came. Interestingly, World Economic Forum, they are now supporting a 15-minute city. It's a concept which was developed by two architects based in France. So now France is Paris. Basically, Paris is moving to become a 15-minute city where everything you can get within a 15-minute walk. So that means they want to avoid cars or expensive transport options. So for this, I think Paris is now converting every street will have a bike lane, and they are converting 60,000 parking spots. They'll be removed, and they'll be replaced with parks. So this kind of changes are happening in Paris, and based on that 15-minute city. So for a resident, everything will be accessible within that 15-minute range. So I think that looks very radical urban planning concept, which is trying to be in tune with climate change ambitions. And importantly, there was this person, Sena Aloka from Togo. That's an African country. So this comment was, COP27 is an opportunity for a just transition away from high-emitting industrial agriculture, corporate monopolies, and false climate solutions, and toward agroecology, food sovereignty, and self-sufficiency. So this puts in perspective what COP27 should be. It should be an opportunity to move away from industrial agriculture towards agroecology. I think that was a very deeply thought statement. Now there is news is coming that Equinor EASA, which is a fossil fuel company, and they have dropped. They postponed the investment decision for Wisting field in oil field in Norway. So this was contested by climate change advocates, and this Wisting oil field, it's a new oil field. In fact, yesterday there was a presentation by someone. I think the site says we are not wasting time. So I don't remember the person's name. She was mentioning that this demand, of fossil fuels is being exaggerated. In fact, there is not so much demand for fossil fuels. Is her position, and of course, she is asking for in COP27. She is asking for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty based on such assessment. There was I think a delegate commented from COP27 that it is 27 degrees outside, but within the rooms, meeting rooms, air conditioning has been given full blast. So the people were wearing winter coats within the room, and outside it is hot, and then there is a lot of queues before cafes for food, water, and coffee. And amidst that, they said there is an actual sewage which is running through the venue. That means some pipe has burst, and it seems the sewage has come out and it is flowing through the venue. So I think this is one of the difficulties of participating in the COP27 is being highlighted. Then a major issue yesterday, which came and which was announced yesterday, and which was reflected also, is India, a delegate, a CXO of a top carbon emitting company in India. He was wearing official Indian delegation badge, and that person was going through all the negotiations and the closed door meetings. So this was pointed out by one of the delegates. So this lobby is sitting with official country delegations. I think that is again being pointed out for long. I'll share some of those details when I'm discussing about the delegates in COP27. So they and significantly yesterday, Bank of England senior advisor Michael Sharon, he said carbon was moving very quickly into a system where it's going to be close to a currency. So we start thinking about putting prices on water, on trees, on biodiversity. So this, I think, if you remember yesterday, I was also talking about how investors have started coming, and the International Monitoring Fund and these conferences of bankers, stockbrokers. I think all of them, they are looking at this as an opportunity for investment. So the same structure of economy which has led to this kind of destruction of environment or load on planet. I think the same structure is being replicated when it comes to the solutions. So I think commodifying nature or putting a currency value to nature, I think that has been contested before, but in COP27, someone has said this is going to happen. So that's again a big. So and anyway, someone again commented that for them it appeared like they compared Sharm el Sheikh and Las Vegas in the US. So both are gambling areas. So they said here in COP27 there is gambling going on the world future. So that is again a very serious comment. So tomorrow, I think, today, 10th November, is about Science Day. Tomorrow we'll discuss, I think it's about decarbonization, which is going to be discussed today, which we'll take it up tomorrow. So I'll add, as before, some more tidbits, especially on what is happening at COP27. And so some of them are very serious, serious aspects. So as I mentioned yesterday, this data for participants has come. Now we can see this is data from UNFCCC. So there are registered participants are 33,000. This is over and above 25,000 delegates at COP26. So the number of people increased. Probably we need to see where this has increased. Where, these are 16,000 parties. That means they are part of the delegations of the countries. So these are the actual parties. When we are saying COP, Conference of Parties is from 195 countries, 16,118 registered participants were there. We are not sure if all of them have come, but still this is the registration data. And now if you look at the secretariat units and bodies, so there are 502, then there are specialized agencies and organizations. Intergovernmental organizations are also participating. They are 1,303. NGOs, this civil society, they are a whopping 11,711. So this looks very high, and coming from 1,751 organizations. So civil society is there, even though the earlier information was Egypt being a country under a dictatorial president. The civil society has come in large numbers, and probably from Africa, most of them are here. But that's a huge number, and even media, there are 3,350 media personnel in COP27. So this is the registration data. It does not mean actual number of participation. So, but usually registered, almost 99% of the registered persons will participate. So I think this is the data which we have to take along. So there, I think this question, nothing about us without us. So this is about participation, how wider participation is being demanded when negotiations are happening. Then the latest data, as I mentioned, there is this corporate accountability desk, and then two other organizations. They are looking into who are participating in this COP meeting. So last COP26, they brought out a report that there are 503 delegates who belong to fossil fuel companies and who have joined COP26 among different, they distributed themselves among different country delegations. So they became part of the parties. So that means they are directly involved in negotiations. So this was raised last year, but I think UNFCCC or any of the bodies which are organizing COPs, they have not responded. And this year again, this report they produced a report, and they say 600 now 25% increase in fossil fuel lobbyists who have come to COP27, and the largest among them is from UAE, United Arab Emirates, which is the going to be the host country for next COP. So there 70% have come from these fossil fuel companies. In fact, UAE has a very big delegation. 1,074 persons are representing UAE at COP27. So this report says there are 30 countries in total who have fossil fuel lobbies in their delegations. So this is a very significant finding, and which can have a bearing on the outcomes which we are expecting from COP27. So they have given a very detailed report on know how many, which country, and all those activities. This is, of course, there was this data which I was speaking about, that 23 developed countries have 12% of world population, but are responsible for more than 50% of global historical emissions. So this is a data coming from Carbon Brief, and they showed that in 2021, this is the data. So there is some reduction, apart from their share being a very high. But if you can see, we are from 1992 and then 2021, there is a reduction in the share. So it was 63.5%. So, and here we are seeing it reduced to 50.5%, which probably means there is now climate justice is happening, where other countries are also adding themselves to this category of polluters. So, which probably, most probably includes China and India. Then there was this hybrid event. I thought, we can see a number of workshops are happening like this, what I'm showing you. So this is talking about driving systemic change and policy and finance for real zero solution. So there is this lot of debates and side events being organized by different organizations and countries. Now, as part of action, climate action, this was from Berlin airport. So they were protesting private jets. So they said no to private jets, and scientists, these are scientists and citizens. So they want private jets to be banned in aviation sector. So some action is coming and at different levels. I would actually expect India also, scientists from India also to respond in whatever way on this. So this is just a glimpse of how workshops happening. This is a global stock take workshop, and you can see how this board is being used to explain different positions. So you can see here Navrod Dubash is an Indian expert, climate expert, and he is being shown what kind of challenges are there for developing countries. This is again interesting. Like I said, scientists are participating, but even athletes are also participating. This is a statement by Athletes Kenya, of all the places, Kenya. And they are saying, we know that Athletics Kenya will be the only athletics federation in the world featuring at COP27. So if it is true, I think that's very significant. So they are there and they are hosting an event called Accelerating Climate and Air Quality Actions Through Athletics. I think that is again shows the involvement of a different section of the society, athletes, sports persons. So at COP27, it's a mix of a lot of stakeholders, scientists, journalists, civil society, athletes. So I think this is very significant as well. So I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I think we'll take. Otherwise, I'll do a short Telugu presentation and close for today. So any questions? అదే నిన్న 10 నవంబర్ 2022 సంవత్సరంలో ఈజిప్ట్లో జరుగుతున్న COP27 సమావేశంలో నిన్న చాలా గ్రూప్ మీటింగ్లు అయ్యాయి. అనేక రకాల గ్రూప్ మీటింగ్లు, అందులో ఎక్కువ శాతము సాంకేతిక అంశాలతో ముడిపడి ఉన్న వాటి మీద చర్చలు జరిగాయి, జరుగుతున్నాయి కూడా. అయితే అవన్నీ చూస్తే నాకు అనిపించింది, ఇప్పుడు మనం 27వ కాప్ సమావేశం చూస్తున్నాము. ప్యారిస్ అగ్రిమెంట్ జరిగి కూడా ఇప్పటికీ 7 మీటింగ్లు అయినాయి. అంటే కాప్ 7 కదా, సారీ 12 మీటింగ్లు. అంటే COP15 అయినప్పుడు ప్యారిస్లో COP15 అయింది, ఇప్పుడు COP27. అంటే 12 సమావేశాలు ప్యారిస్ అగ్రిమెంట్ తర్వాత జరిగినాయి. కానీ నిన్నటి సాంకేతిక సమావేశాలు చూస్తే అందులో ఇప్పటికీ కూడా ఈ పదము నిర్వచనం ఎట్లా ఉండాలి, మనం ఎట్లాంటి మెకానిజమ్స్ ద్వారా నిధులు అందజేస్తాం, ఇట్లాంటి అంటే చాలా ప్రాథమిక విషయాలు ఇప్పుడు చర్చిస్తుంటే నాకు అనిపిస్తుంది, అసలు ఈ 12 సమావేశాల్లో ఏం చేస్తున్నారు. పోయిన సంవత్సరం COP26 అయినాక కూడా ఈ మన సంవత్సర కాలంలో కూడా ఎట్లాంటి చర్చలు జరిగినాయి అనేది నాకు పెద్ద అనుమానంగా కనపడుతుంది. ఇట్లా అంటే ఇదేదో టైం పాస్ అని కొందరు విమర్శించినట్టు ఈ COP27 సమావేశాలు కూడా టైం పాస్ సమావేశాలుగా మిగులుతాయా? ఒకవైపు ఏమో ప్రకృతి వైపరీత్యాలు విపరీతంగా వచ్చి పడుతున్నాయి, అన్ని దేశాలు అతలాకుతం అవుతున్నాయి, కరువు వస్తుంది, విపరీతమైన వర్షాలతోటి ఆహార ఉత్పత్తి పడిపోతుంది, అనేక మంది ప్రాణాలు కోల్పోతున్నారు. ఇదంతా ఉత్పాతాలు పెరుగుతున్న క్రమంలో ఇంకా వీళ్ళు కూర్చొని నేను ఆ పదం ఎట్లుంది, ఇది ఎట్లుంది, అది ఎట్లుంది అని చర్చిస్తున్నారంటే అసలు వీళ్ళు అక్కడ ఏం చేస్తున్నారు అనేది పెద్ద అనుమానంగా కనపడుతుంది. ఇక రెండోది, అక్కడ ఇప్పుడు 33,000 మంది రిజిస్ట్రేషన్ చేసుకున్నారు. ఇంతమంది అక్కడ పోయి ఏం చేస్తున్నారు, వీళ్ళు ఏం సమావేశాలు పెడుతున్నారు, ఇంతమంది పోతే ఆడ పని అవుతుందా, అసలు ఇందులో రాజకీయ అంటే దేశాధినేతల పాత్ర ఎంత ఉంది, ఇవన్నీ కూడా అనుమానం కలిగించేటి. అందులో ప్రతి దేశంకి సంబంధించి ఒక ప్రతినిధి వర్గం ఉంటుంది. అది రిజిస్ట్రేషన్ లెక్క చూస్తే దాదాపు 16,000 మంది ఉన్నారు వాళ్ళే. అయితే ఈ 16,000 మందిలో ఒక 600 మంది ఈ కంపెనీలతోటి ముడిపడి కంపెనీల ప్రతినిధులు ఆయా దేశాల ప్రతినిధి వర్గంలో ఒక ప్రతినిధిగా వచ్చినట్టు నిన్న ఒక నివేదిక వచ్చింది. అదే పోయిన సంవత్సరం COP26లో అట్లా 500 మందిని గుర్తించారు, ఈసారి 600 మంది, అంటే ఇంకా పెరిగారు. మరి వీళ్ళని నివారించే ప్రయత్నము ఎక్కడ UNFCCC కానీ ఐక్యరాజ్య సమితి సంస్థలు చేస్తున్నట్టు అనిపిస్తలేదు, అసలు స్పందిస్తలేదు. మరి వీళ్ళు ఎందుకు వస్తున్నారు? కంపెనీలు, కాలుష్యం కలుగజేసే కంపెనీలు, బొగ్గు, తర్వాత డీజిల్, పెట్రోల్, క్రూడ్ ఆయిల్ ఇట్లాంటి ప్రోడక్ట్స్తో వ్యాపారం చేసే సంస్థల ప్రతినిధులు ఆయా దేశాల ప్రతినిధులుగా ఎందుకు వస్తున్నారు అంటే, వీళ్ళు అసలు ఒక ఒప్పందంగా జరగకుండా అనేక రకాల అడ్డంకులు సృష్టించడానికే వస్తున్నట్టు పోయిన COP26లో ఆరోపించారు. కానీ అది నిజమే అనిపిస్తుంది, ఎందుకంటే అప్పుడు COP26లో కూడా 4 అగ్రిమెంట్ల మీద దాదాపు అంగీకారం అయినాక మళ్ళీ వెనక్కి పోవడం జరిగింది ఆయా దేశాలు. మన బొగ్గు ఉపయోగము 2030 అంటే వచ్చే 8 ఏళ్ళ తర్వాత పూర్తిగా జీరో చేస్తామని ఒక ఒప్పందం అయింది. ఒప్పందమైన తెల్లారి 30 దేశాలు చేస్తే తెల్లారే ఆస్ట్రేలియా, తర్వాత ఇండోనేషియా వీళ్ళు మేము అందులో ఉండము, ఎందుకంటే మాకు బొగ్గు ఆధారిత మాకు ఆర్థిక రంగం ఉంది కాబట్టి మేము చేయలేము అని వెనక్కి వెళ్ళడం జరిగింది. సో దాని వెనకాల వీళ్ళు లాబీ ఉందనేది అప్పుడే గుర్తించారు. అట్లా ఇప్పుడు డిఫారెస్టేషన్ మీద, అడవుల నరికివేత మీద కూడా ఒక అంగీకారం దాదాపు వచ్చింది 3 రోజుల్లోనే. కానీ మళ్ళీ తెల్లారే బ్రెజిల్ లాంటి దేశాలు మేము అందులో ఉండమని చెప్పారు. మేము అమెజాన్ ఫారెస్ట్ మాది, దీని నుంచి మాకు ఆదాయం వస్తుంది కాబట్టి మేము అడవుల నరికివేతను ప్రోత్సహిస్తామని కూడా వాళ్ళు చెప్పడం జరిగింది. ఇట్లా ఒప్పందాలు జరగకుండా, ఒక అంగీకారం రాకుండా అడ్డంకులు సృష్టించడానికే ఈ కంపెనీల ప్రతినిధులు ఆయా దేశాల ప్రతినిధి వర్గాల్లో చేరి మనకు అసలు ఒక దిశగా చర్చ లేకుండా చేస్తున్నారని మనకు స్పష్టంగా కనపడుతుంది. మరి ఈ నేపథ్యంలో అసలు COP27 నుంచి కూడా మనం ఏదన్నా నిర్దిష్ట ఫలితం వస్తుందా, ఒక నిర్దిష్ట ఒప్పందం వస్తుందా అంటే ఇప్పటికైతే అనుమానాస్పదంగానే ఉంది. కాకపోతే COP26కి COP27కి కొంత తేడా ఉంది. COP27లో అప్పటిలాగా COP26లో ఏంటంటే మనం ఇంకా మన యొక్క అంటే ఈ కాలుష్యం పెరుగుతున్న నేపథ్యంలో భూతాపం తగ్గించడానికి మనం చాలా కఠినమైన నిర్ణయాలు తీసుకోవాలని ఒక ఒత్తిడి COP26లో ఉండేది. ఇప్పుడు ఆ ఒత్తిడి లేదు. అంటే 1.5 degrees సెంటిగ్రేడ్ పెరుగుతుంది భూతాపం అనే భయం ఉండింది. ఇక అది మనం ఏం చేయలేము. మనం ఇప్పుడు 2.5 డిగ్రీలు పోకుండా ఆపుదామనే ప్రయత్నంలో ఇప్పుడు అందరూ ఒక స్థాయి అంగీకారానికి వచ్చినట్టు అనిపిస్తుంది COP27లో. అంటే ప్యారిస్ అగ్రిమెంట్లో ఏవైతే ఇచ్చారో వాటిని అమలు చేయడానికే ఇప్పుడు ఈ COP27లో చర్చలు జరుగుతున్నాయి. ప్యారిస్ అగ్రిమెంట్లో ప్రతి దేశం తను ఇచ్చిన ఏవైతే లక్ష్యాలు ఉన్నాయో ఆ లక్ష్యాల వల్ల ఈ కార్బన్ ఎమిషన్స్ తగ్గవు, భూతాపం 1.5 డిగ్రీ దాటిపోతుంది అని ఇప్పటికీ అనేక సార్లు IPCC రిపోర్ట్ ఇచ్చినా కూడా ఇప్పటికీ మళ్ళీ ప్యారిస్ అగ్రిమెంట్ దగ్గరే ఈ COP27 చర్చలు చేస్తున్న పరిస్థితి మనం చూస్తున్నాం. తర్వాత నిన్న అనేక మంది యువతతో కూడిన సమావేశాలు జరిగినాయి. COP27కి ముందే ఒక 3 రోజుల యువత సమావేశం జరిగింది. కాయ్ అంటారు, కాన్ఫరెన్స్ ఆఫ్ యూత్ అని. అది ఆ యూత్ వాళ్ళు ఒక స్టేట్మెంట్ ఇచ్చారు, కానీ ఆ స్టేట్మెంట్ ఇంకా బయటకు రాలేదు. బహుశా రేపు ఎల్లుండి వస్తుంది. అంటే యువతను దీని మీద ప్రోత్సహించడానికి ప్రయత్నాలు జరుగుతున్నాయి. కానీ ఇప్పుడు ఎవరైతే నిర్ణేతలు ఉన్నారో, ఎవరైతే నిర్ణయం చేసే పరిస్థితిలో ఉన్నారో, ఎవరైతే అధికారంలో ఉన్నారో వీళ్ళు మాత్రము ఇప్పటికీ మీమాంసలో మీనమేషాలు లెక్కబడుతున్న పరిస్థితి కనపడుతుంది. చూద్దాం మరి ఇవాళ 11 నవంబర్ నాడు ఏ విధమైన ముందడుగు పడుతుంది, దీంట్లో మనం ప్రోగ్రెస్ ఏమొస్తుంది అనేది, ప్రగతి ఏం సాధించారనేది మనం చూద్దాము. సో నేను ఇక్కడికి ఆపేస్తున్నాను. ధన్యవాదాలు. ఎవరికైనా ప్రశ్నలు ఉంటే అడగొచ్చు.